We have most of our board members here. We're going to go ahead and get started just so that we can jump right into it. First of all, thank you everyone for being here this evening. I really appreciate you all taking time out of your evening. I know we had over 120 individuals on here last week. One of the pieces of feedback that I did receive from last week, which I want to be able to honor, is there were a lot of individuals who had their hand raised and were waiting in line that didn't have an opportunity to speak. So what I would just ask tonight is, as you are raising your hand to ask a question, if you've already had a chance to address the board in one of these sessions, I would just ask out of respect for other community members who maybe this is their only point of access to the board and being able to express any views or questions around the budget, just out of courtesy to them, just to lower your hand and allow others to go ahead of you and then come up later in line. We do ask that each person, once you raise your hand and ask a question, because of the number of individuals we saw last time we weren't able to get to, we'll allow like a question per person. We do realize too that people will have comments that they won't want to share. So what our goal this evening is, if you could share a quick comment and the question, and then on our end, we will also try to answer quickly so we can get through as many as we are physically able to. In addition to that, I'll be jumping back and forth between people with their hand up in line, as well as questions in the Q&A section. And again, we'll jump right into that. In addition to that, what I'll just share is we'll have about an hour worth of time, but depending on the number of questions, we are able to extend that a little bit longer. And I know many of you are parents on here with little kiddos in the background, so I appreciate you taking time out of your evening. And if you're eating dinner or whatever you need to do, there's no shame in that. So we'll jump right in. So in order to get in line to ask a question, there's a little hand raise button. Go ahead and click on that. Or in the Q&A section, it's not in the chat. If you click on Q&A, you'd be able to submit a question either anonymously or with your name in that section as well. So with that, let's jump right in. So let's go to the queue. All right. It looks like, just in terms of order, Alexis, we'll start off with you because I know you haven't had a chance in this section yet, and then Sharon, and then we'll go to Al, just to give people a chance first. So Alexis.
Hello. Thank you so much. I will not take up much of your time at all. I just, the music teachers wanted to say thank you for the decision that was made in the last board meeting and for your listening so closely to what the community had asked for to be brought back. We just really, really appreciate it. And we wanted to make sure that we also just clarified one small thing, that the conversation around private lessons, we just want to make sure that it was understood that we're seeing people referring to private lessons a lot. They are not private lessons. If they were private lessons, that would be amazing. They are group lessons. And so I just want the community to know exactly what that is. Some groups are really small because it's always dependent on how many kids are playing a specific instrument at that school. Some are 18, 19, 20 students in one of those lessons. So we just wanted to make sure that was clear and people understood what that money is going towards. And it's incredibly helpful to those students. So thank you again. I really appreciate all of the dialogue. This has been a really nice process. So thank you.
Thanks, Alexis. Sharon? Hi, Sharon. Thanks for joining us. I think you might have to unmute. It's right next to the raise hand button and kind of over on the bottom. There you go.
Okay. Hi. Thank you for your time and allowing us to have these discussions so that we can contribute to the budget. I appreciate, I work for another school district and I don't believe they do this in helping, create the budget. So I do appreciate, as a parent, having a voice. one of my concerns as you are trying to save a bunch of money is the cuts that are being considered. Now that music's back in, I'm really appreciative of that. I'm thinking about when you go to a school district like CVU, who is bigger than ours, if you go to their directory and you look at their administrative list, it doesn't seem to be as loaded with people who are not directly working with students as our district does. So when you go to our directory and you look at the kind of central office staff, there's a lot of people listed under finance and HR and things like that. And then you see the transportation list, which is, you know, hundreds of people. I just want to kind of put my plug in for if we can not look at taking $300,000 to $6 million away from student programming and people who work directly with students, and look at other ways to save money in our budget by looking at people, positions who are not directly affecting students. When we think about our students and their needs for, social emotional skills and ways to, help them become really independent students, they need people, and they need people who are licensed and people who can teach, who can provide intervention. So I'm just trying to put a plug into if we could look at the broader staffing and look at making the cuts at people who are not directly working with students. Everybody in the district benefits from health insurance and some sort of benefit, I imagine. So it's not just teachers who are getting this, that the health benefits are affecting. Obviously we need a lot of teachers because we have a lot of students. So if we can look at other places to make the cuts rather than the teaching staff and the para staff, that would be really great.
Thanks so much, Sharon. And board members, again, you're all on here as well, so any board member is welcome to chime in as well. So with that, I'm going to move on to Andrea.
Okay. Hi.
Join us. Hey.
Hi. Good evening. First of all, my name is Andrea Frankelangia, and I'm a district employee as well as a parent of a 4th grade child. First, I would like to thank you for the time and effort and thoughtfulness you put into making our district a great place. I would also like to thank you for keeping the music programs as they are. I understand that we now need to find a different place to get that money from. I am very concerned about the projected class sizes for next school year. Fleming 5th grade will start with an average of 24 and 8/10 students. Founders with 23 and 4/10, while Westford 5th grade will start with 16. 24 and 8/10 children is 1/10 away from the EWSD policy limit for that grade level. 16 is below the minimum of 18. As a person who works with some 5th grade classrooms with class sizes that are 24 and 25, it is extremely challenging for every child to get what they need. As a matter of fact, there can be grade level ranges within that one classroom from 1st grade up to grade 12. How do we make sure that each child is able to get what they want or get what they need?
Beth or board members, anyone like to respond?
I can respond, and maybe Aaron would jump in with me. We have, as we look at all the supports that we have in place for our students and our added therapeutic programs that we're putting in as well, we do feel like we looked at numbers last night. Was it last night at the board meeting? We looked at numbers and the number of supports that we have for our students. So we do feel our intervention systems and the response to intervention whole system that we've put into place and looking at our first instruction too does help with class size. We are looking at, we're relooking at some of the younger grades to think about that class size, though. That is a discussion that we're having, continue to have with our district office and our principals. So we're working on that. Erin, do you have anything else to chime in with supports to our students?
Good to see you, Andrea. I think I would just add that holding the amount of special education service stable, as well as the paraeducator support stable within support services, is also something that is in the FY26 budget for that reason as well.
And then it looks like in terms of questions, I wanted to jump over to the chat for a minute, and then we'll jump back to more individuals in the queue as well. In the chat, I know this was a question that came up since our last meeting, just around 8th grade algebra. And is 8th grade algebra still being offered for high school credit? Someone had thought that it was heard in the last meeting that there is no longer 8th grade algebra. Would we be able to just clarify that one? Because I think that'd be a good one to clarify.
We do have teaching staff for 8th grade algebra. There'll be middle school teachers. Some of those middle school teachers are certified from 5th to 12th, though, and I'm not sure where they stand right now. I'd have to look deeper into that. And Jackie was unable to attend this evening's meeting, but I have not been able to touch base with her on that. But we will have algebra in 8th grade. That is a plan.
Will it still be on their high school transcripts? Is it still going to be taken as credit through the high school?
I think so, Sam. I cannot say 100% yes to that. I do know that we were working on it to make sure that we can have 8th grade algebra. But that is the question that I'll continue to research and look for.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, so just to clarify, there will be algebra. So I think that's the big one, because there was a question about that out there. Thank you, Beth. Going back over to individuals with their hands raised. Let me just get back to that part. Vanessa?
Hi.
Hey, thanks for joining us.
Hi, thank you. I just had a question. I'm a Westford parent of 4 kids between the ages of 1 and 7. And one of my concerns is regarding the general feeling of potential school closure with these changes. So just wondering, I know the board has addressed that, but I think we just continue to have concerns that this makes our school more vulnerable to eventual closure.
Sure, I think that's a great question, and I know that in conversations with other Westford families, that's been a common thing, because there has been individuals in the community that have asked to close Westford. I do know last year this was brought up, and the reason we brought up the total cost for closing Westford or other schools was to clarify what that cost would actually be to the district. And last year, the board unanimously said this is not a direction that we are moving. This year, in terms of consolidation of grade levels, part of that is due to feedback, just to be able to have, especially students in 6th through 8th, have equal opportunities, and also in pre-K. One of the things that we've dug into as a district is realizing that pre-K students at Westford might not be able to access all the same services that are available at EES or other parts of the district. Because of just differences in staffing. So for instance, around SLPs or other special ed services as well. So in doing this, the proposal that was brought forward to us was in an effort to align across the district so that pre-K were able to access all the same opportunities, and also so that 6th through 8th graders would be able to access all the same opportunities, so that when students get to the high school level, they all have that same experience and same level of opportunity and access to get to that point. So that's the proposal that's been brought to us. In terms of the pre-K piece, I do know that with that in particular, that is something that the board did ask administration to bring back more information for us for the next meeting, just to look at potential around transportation or potential around what the cost would actually be in, I think there's a little feedback there, and what the actual cost would be in terms of keeping it at 3 different locations. But Beth or any other board member, feel free to chime in as well.
Okay. I think I had concerns regarding, so, I like trust the board's stance on this, and I believe you when you guys say like, you don't want school closure, aren't for that. But I think my concern is in future years, like what guarantee do we have as Westford parents? So I'm looking at like a 1-year-old, and in 5 or 6 years, is this going to be a conversation again? Or even potentially next year when you're talking about a budget next year needing to be cut. So I think what can the board explore in terms of assurances for Westford families that this isn't coming down the road in 5-10 years?
I know like there was also the thought of what other opportunities can be offered at Westford. Beth, did you want to speak to that one a little bit as well? Because I know you shared a little bit at one board meeting around that one.
Great. We'd like to start in the spring thinking about what Westford can be and how we could even draw and attract students from Essex to Westford to keep that population and enrollment up. Right now, our enrollment overall is declining, so I can't say in 10 years we're going to have the same schools we have now. I think that's straight across the district. That's Vermont. But we do feel, and I'm sure the board feels this way, as well as the district office leaders and principals, we do want to work with Westford to figure out the best next steps and to keep that school alive and have other students join it. That is the plan.
Hey, Robert, I would just toss in too. I mean, I understand the anxiety that the Westford parents feel, but we'll be honest about it. To try to guarantee what's going to happen in 5 to 10 years, we've already seen what's happening on the state level. We can't give you that guarantee. I mean, to be honest, we can't give that guarantee to parents of ADL kids or parents of Founders kids or parents of EES kids. But I can say this board has been very intentional in how we've managed, the schools across the district. We care about every community across this district. And we've taught this many, many times. It's not individual communities, it's all of our communities. And I think that the board, in our deliberations last year and deliberations this year, we've made a point that Westford is important to this district, is a vital part of our district, and we're going to continue to work in that direction. So again, I mean, it's probably not the best guarantee I can give you for 5 to 10 years, because again, we have no idea what's going to happen. But I think at least with this board right now and with this administration, we're going to continue to work to make sure that whatever Westford looks like as we go forward, it's still going to be a center part of the community out in Westford. So.
I want to support what Marlon said as well, is we absolutely, unfortunately, cannot provide a guarantee that in 5 or 10 years, Westford School will still be open, because there's a lot of discussions going around at the state level, and nobody knows really what the model is going to look like. One proposal is to have 5 school districts serving statewide. And with that in mind, there's a discussion on possibly consolidation, et cetera. So I don't think anyone understands completely what the future holds in 1 or 2 years, depending on what occurs. And I think we want to keep Westford going as much as possible. To put it in perspective, I've been on the board a long time, and when I first was on the Westford School Board, we had in excess of 300 students K through 8, and now we're hovering around 170 or so K through 8. But that's how much our student population has declined over the years, and it's not just Westford, but it's pretty much statewide. Because if I'm not mistaken, the student population in Vermont at present is less than what was present pre-Civil War. So I think that the question of what is going on beyond the schools, it's people are not staying here and they're moving, et cetera. So that is also an issue as well. But nevertheless, I wanted to share that perspective. Thanks. And thank you for everybody turning out.
Thanks, Andre. I'm going to jump back over to the Q&A quick so we can get through a couple of those questions, then jump back to the rest of the group. Beth, these are just a couple of quick ones I think we'd be able to answer quickly. How would the change in Summit be eliminating a nurse position? Would the ARC programs for behaviors need a nurse for safety purposes? So I wasn't sure if you wanted to just hit that one quick.
I'll turn that over to Erin.
Sure. So the ARC Center, there's a couple of things in the Q&A that I think might be worth kind of linking together. One is the nursing question. And for 16 to 20 students, we don't need a full-time nurse. And we do currently share nursing services with the building next door. And also the contracted service provider who supports us in ARC is able to provide some nursing services. So we don't need a full-time nurse for ARC. As a matter of fact, it's more helpful to just, for example, whether it's at Summit to link up with Fleming, or if it is at 58 Founders to link up with EMS, and they're so proximate to those schools. I also see, and this I think is a confusion, that the Summit is being repurposed for purposes of ARC, and ARC could stay where it is. And if Summit is repurposed, it makes sense to use ARC for Summit. So that's a little bit different than repurposing Summit specifically for ARC. I hope that helps. I keep seeing kind of questions show up related to using Summit for ARC. Why are we doing that? It has more to do with making sure that we're using all of our district space to the greatest extent possible for our students and our own internal needs, and that ARC would be able to benefit from the space at Summit if we look at the alignment design in the FY26 plan. So I hope that's helpful, Robert, on a couple of those questions.
The other one, just as a follow-up here, so we can hit another one, is just how many students would be in the 3 therapeutic classrooms? And this would be at Summit, correct?
Yeah, I can handle
go ahead, Dylan. Yeah,
that a little bit. I don't know if you can see me on the screen. Our design right now is to have up to 6 students in each therapeutic classroom. And so that's the design we sketched. And that's how we based some of the efficiencies that we found with our behavior interventionists. We're still looking at which schools it makes for those therapeutic classrooms to be in. And it will come down to both where we have space and where there's a developmental match between the classroom and the school. We have a couple ideas, but once we know that that idea goes forward, we'll start with some more detailed planning. But those programs won't be in Summit. They'll be in one of the 4, is that we have 5 elementary schools. Yep.
That's for ARC. And then, so just while we're on ARC, I think there's a couple more in here just so we can hit them all at the same time. There's a question here, 2 of them. One is, can ARC go to Westford Middle School? This would help keep students, or the school in use for students, assuming you move the 6th and 8th grade to EMS. And then the second one along with that is, the person said, this has been asked a number of times, if 100 third graders can fit into Fleming, can an expanded ARC program move there instead of closing Summit? Summit families would like to understand the other options that are here. So Dylan, I think you started to address the ARC piece right there, and then what's going to Summit, but do you want to just circle back to both of those?
Yeah, so there are a few questions in there. Can you just repeat the first one, Robert?
Sure. So the first one is, could the ARC program move to Westford Middle School?
I mean, I think there's space at Westford if we were to look at that, to do that, and there's pros and cons with that option.
And then the second one was, if could the ARC program in essence move to Fleming rather than moving the 100 third graders over to Fleming? I think going back to your answer before, you were saying the ARC program will be spread out throughout the schools. That's not the program moving specifically.
The therapeutic classrooms will, in our proposal, are not co-located with ARC, right? To your question, if we didn't make any changes at Fleming, do we have capacity for ARC? That's a good question. I wouldn't be able to answer that. I don't know, Erin, if you know the floor plan and know the space as well.
Well, It's linked to what I was trying to say earlier, that with the shift of Summit to Hiawatha and Fleming, it opens up space. But that wasn't the purpose of opening up the space, was to put ARC there. So ARC could go to Westford. ARC could stay where it is. ARC could go into Summit Street if it's repurposed. The primary driver of this conversation is not that ARC needs a place to go. It is a broader conversation about repurposing a school in the context of the larger budget discussion. So, Brian, I see your hand up. Do you want to try on that as well?
Yeah, a major element to try to get close and try to achieve the budget guidance was the consolidation of our grades, increasing class size, and it ended up saving about $3 million. And so what that left was Summit with an opportunity to be repurposed. And so, as Erin has said, that it was never that sense of we have a need and Summit is the very best place to put it. It was to succeed in getting the guidance and find, in this case, about $3 million. We needed to get schools denser so that they had more students in them, and then have the classes in those. And that was what we did with Hiawatha and with Fleming. And that left Summit available. And it seemed like the two things that we had was ARC is currently sort of limited to achieve its full potential because it doesn't have enough square footage. And instead of adding and spending money to do that at 58 Founders, we had district-owned space in Summit. And the same question came up with the district office. So it wasn't a matter that we needed to find a place for two locations. It was that we all of a sudden had 35,000 square feet in Summit, and what would be the best and highest use of that.
Thanks, Brian. And that goes to another question there. And I saw a couple of saying, why are we closing Summit completely? So to clarify, like, Summit is still being utilized, and I think around pre-K as well. So there's, again, more information coming back, but pre-K was one of the things the board asked administration to come back and say, what would transportation look like, or what would it look like to have pre-K amongst a couple of different schools? And that is more information that we'll see come Tuesday night. Going back into the group with their hands raised, Megan.
Okay. I'm hiding in the bathroom because I've got all three kids with me. So thank you. First, I wanted to say thank you guys so much for considering everything the Westford parents came to say on Tuesday about the preschool program at Westford. So thank you for taking that into consideration and looking into it. So my question was, there's a number listed for the movement of 6 through 8 to EMS, and that number is listed as a reduction of 143,000. I wanted to know if we had the breakdown of that, and if it included transportation, and where that number came from, because it's almost the same class sizes. They'll be a little bit bigger if those kiddos move to EMS. So I assume it means some teachers' salaries, but I was curious if we could get a breakdown of what that number was. Thank you.
Brian, do you want to speak to that one? In terms of what?
Yeah, so that number is the savings from the move. There are additional savings inside of Westford by moving those out. There's some class size and there's some other FTE when we lower the population of Westford overall. So the whole savings of the move, including pre-K, is around 260,000. I can get a breakdown. I don't have it right now in front of me, but it's primarily what we list is just the personnel. So that's just salary and benefits. And the transportation right now, we're transporting from Westford Elementary to the high school currently every single day, AM and PM. And the thought is that we would be able to utilize that transportation that currently exists.
Okay, so you think there's not going to be an additional cost for adding the EMS quote stop from Westford?
We pay sort of on a route basis, like a daily basis. So there's a single cost for equipment, labor, and all that. So it's just like that. We didn't double our costs when all of a sudden we started doing double routes and stacking them. We do a K5 route, and then we do a 612 route now to try to lessen our demand, and that didn't double our costs. We were just able to utilize the bus service to its utmost and have some additional labor. So it wouldn't be significant to make that that like 3.5 mile detour. Now, depending upon what registration is for transportation and so forth, I mean, that's what we're always managing in transportation, is what is the demand, because people aren't required to do it, and people that register don't necessarily always use it. So we're always trying to manage demand, and that would be something that we'd be responsible for doing depending upon what happens at Westford Middle School.
Thanks, Brian.
Yep.
Well, it looks like Katie has the next question there.
Nope. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Great. Thank you for having this meeting for folks to come out and share. Again, I'm Katie Ringer. I'm a preschool teacher at Essex Elementary School, and I'm also the Essex Westford PLC leader for preschool. And I do appreciate everyone's comments coming out and speaking about preschool in our district. We know that the board has requested some other options regarding preschool. When reviewing those options, I just ask, does one proposed plan versus the other make longer term sense, given the vision for Essex Westford School District, what we want for early education in our school district, and what the state may or may not be directing us to do down the road. As some of you may know, there has been some plans put out there around some universal preschool for 4-year-olds. And obviously the Agency of Education is undergoing a lot of things right now. So it's unclear when and if that will actually happen, but it was passed into law already a year or two ago. So when looking at those options, is there one that makes more sense in the long term, especially with moving spots around and figuring out those pieces? And I know this is something that everyone here is struggling with. I'm struggling with how to justify funding certain things, like folks are talking about non-direct student roles and other things. It could be literally anything. For some students, but not access to preschool, especially since we're providing legally obligated services for students with disabilities. That is one of it's not our only function, but it is one of the main functions of our preschool program. And we do already run pretty lean in comparison to other school districts, given our student numbers. So I just want that to be part of the conversation as you're considering options. Thanks.
Thanks, Katie. And then Chrissy. Hi, Chrissy. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I didn't realize I was so close to the beginning of the line. I'm Chrissy Holtgren. I teach 2nd grade at Hiawatha. And I really just wanted to speak up as a classroom teacher and share with you. I'm aware of the numbers that we're going to be having for our class size next year, and they're pretty high. As a teacher who had 22 students this year, I just lost one, it's very difficult to manage 7 and 8-year-olds who are not quite independent in a classroom of 22. We're looking at upwards of 25 and 26 for 4 classrooms at Hiawatha next year. And I understand that we can be creative with the 5th teacher, but that adds a whole new layer of work for the classroom teachers. I appreciate that Beth said that you are relooking at those numbers and class sizes for next year, but I do want to make the board aware that when you're looking at 25, 26 bodies in those classrooms, it's very difficult to manage. It's more difficult to build relationships. It's tight. And even with extra support in the room gets very small very quick. I worry that we have such high standards here that we all want to meet, and we believe that all children can live at learn at high levels of learning, and I'm just not convinced that with 25, 26 students in the room that will be even possible. So I'm hoping that the board and the administrators will reconsider class size at K2, please. Thanks.
Thanks, Chrissy. And I know that that was one of the pieces that administration will be bringing back to us as well this next meeting as well. So thank you so much, and thanks for being here. Sonia?
Hi. All right, so first off, I would like to say thank you to the board for the work that you all have put into this. Also, for having this meeting for those like me that can't make it on in person on the Tuesday nights. For those of us with little children, it's not easy to be up that late. My bedtime is like when the meeting starts. So this is great. So those of us who can't make it still feel like we have a voice in all of this. I would also like to say that I think it's great that some people in the community who no longer have children in the system have spoken up not to make the changes to the programs such as the music program and the preschool. I think that's really wonderful, and that's like a big reason why we moved to a community like this is, you know, for the school and for the pre-K. I did make my feelings known last time. You know, I am advocating to keep Hiawatha the way it is, just because my child had such a great experience in the pre-K program there. I would love for my youngest to have the same experience there as well. And yeah, thank you so much. I don't really have any outright questions at this time, but I just think it's great that you guys are doing this.
Hey, Robert, you're muted.
Thank you. Sorry, little kiddo was not happy in the background, so I didn't want everyone hearing that. I just wanted to bring up one question here that was in the chat that I think we can answer quickly. There was the question around transportation of people getting their kids to Hiawatha without busing in the junction. Brian, I think that's something that we can answer probably pretty quickly. There is busing in the junction, and with the change in where students would go to school in the proposal, my assumption would be that busing would also accommodate that and bring kids to Hiawatha rather than bringing them to where they would have gone at Summit.
Yes.
Yep. So I just wanted to clarify that one out there because I've seen that one come up a couple of times in the chat. There was a couple of questions in here from individuals, just again encouraging the board to take a look at class size both at Hiawatha and EMS. And then The other question in here, there's a couple more around pre-K. So again, for the individuals asking questions around pre-K, that will be discussed more at Tuesday night. We'll go back into the group here. Michelle, you're up. Hi, Michelle. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, sorry, I'm in the dark feeding a baby right now. I'm a teacher at Summit, and I just wanted to speak up on our behalf. I think that we were all under the impression that this proposal was officially happening based on some different communications that we received and our children received. We just want you to know that we love our school. We would love to keep it open. And we'd love to have some more conversations with the board if they'd be open to coming and visiting us and spending some time with us. So thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Dennis?
Hi, thank you for the time today. One, I just want to echo what Michelle just said. We thought it was I'm a parent of a child at Summit and also Fleming, but we thought that with the news of Summit that it was a done deal. So appreciate the time today. All right. I do have one comment and one question. The comment is around the breaking the lease of the current district office. I work at a business in that same building, and our contract is very ironclad, and so not sure how breaking that is going to be able to be possible, as we've had some struggles on our end. But my question is, as a parent, with a student through the Compass program, or as also a member of a CPAC, concerned with that segregation of the students with disabilities, all right, and what is the vision for the classrooms? I'm getting a little concerned that a lot of the notions are to almost separate some of these children with higher needs, all right, than those in the classroom. And I know with my son, as his development's been really strong from being able to interact with students of all abilities on his end. All right, so just looking for a little more of what that vision is going to be for those classrooms and even the locations.
Thanks, Dennis. Aaron or Dylan, Brian, Beth?
Yeah, I think Aaron and I both could chime into this. I think, thank you, Dennis, for those words, and thanks for being here. Our goal is is always to have the most inclusive setting for students, and I think, Aaron and I definitely support that, and our teachers support that. We do have some students that, despite all the good efforts, are struggling and need more specialized support and more intensive support. And that's the impetus for the therapeutic classroom. But it's also why we're looking at nesting the therapeutic classrooms inside an elementary school. So that way, where students can be successful and integrated into the other parts of classrooms, other parts of the school, that will be done. And where they need more support, they'll have the therapeutic classroom to do that. And we see that as a better option than having a one-on-one and not being able to integrate into a classroom and working a lot of the time with an adult and not being around other kids. And so we're trying to look at our continuum of options and provide options for kids the best that we can. And we feel like this is a need. And the IEP process, and the parents are a part of that team, would always be part of those discussions and part of those decisions around how and when a student would access those therapeutic classrooms. Aaron, do you want to add?
Yeah, I would just add, hey, Denny, good to see you. I would just add that Compass will still exist. It's not going away. And so it's actually adding to our continuum of options for our parents and our students to consider in the context of the IEP decision-making process. And I think Dylan said it well, but I'll reiterate it. We have a legal obligation to educate students with non-disabled students to the greatest extent possible under the law. So it is expected from it's called least restrictive environment, that we would always educate students in an inclusive setting wherever possible. And so this is an addition to our continuum. We do have students who go to therapeutic schools. We do have students who struggle to be part of their classroom at times. And this is a missing part of the continuum, to either be in a classroom of 20 students or go to an outside placement feels like not enough of a continuum, which is why we're adding this component. But it will always be in the context of the IEP team conversation, and Compass continues to exist. It's not going anywhere. So I hope that helps.
Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention about the lease. So we are in a lease until June 30th, 2027. We absolutely can't break that lease. We intend on talking to the landlord and seeing if there's a way to negotiate out of the lease, but we wouldn't break it, and we know how long it is. So we've kind of represented that. It wouldn't mean that we couldn't move parts of our office over, or even all of it, right? That and repurpose this space for as long as the lease. So there's some options, but one option is certainly not on the table, and that would be to break a lease that we're not legally able to. So we'll work with the landlord and see if we can find if this even comes to be. And that's part of the reason why we haven't been pursuing actively, because it's just a recommendation, and we have to see how the board deliberates and what they choose to have as an adopted budget.
Thanks so much, Brian. I'm gonna move back over to the chat. There's a question here. It's a WES 5th grade and K parent is support staff for grades 6th through 8th, moving with Westford students to EMS. For students on IEPs, or will EMS staff need to take on additional students in their current workloads?
So we are allocating support services staff, special educators, and paraeducators. We do this across the district based on need. So there is consideration related to students who are eligible for special education, require services that would move from Westford to EMS. And we've looked at that allocation to make sure that we would staff that appropriately. Staffings for support services is never really completely static either, because students come, they leave, students have different levels of need, and we are in a perpetual state of figuring out how to staff, and it's our job to make sure that IEPs are covered. So we certainly have looked at the special ed side of that.
And then Ashley, you're up. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, can you hear me? Oh, wonderful. My name's Ashley Gagnon. I'm a teacher at ADL. I'm a literacy specialist, and I just want to kind of take into consideration, I've been watching all the board meetings, and what I hear is like what's best for students. And I think it's important that we remember that we have a group of students, particularly with COVID years, where there's a critical window with literacy in K through 3, who had missed some of that instruction due to all of the things that COVID brought in. And we are seeing those kids come in. So I just want us to really think about literacy in terms of the supports that students need for literacy. I think nationally, we just had some research coming out that we're trending in the wrong direction. So I think it would not be a great idea to pull supports for literacy. I think reading is a human right, and that all students should have the opportunity to access quality education. It is the foundation of every other class: music, art, social studies, math. So please just take that into consideration. So we have quality instruction in all 3 tiers that we are providing for our students. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ashley. There was a question here regarding the EMS and Westford merger. How have affected students been consulted since the proposed budget was released? For the superintendent search, kids grades 3rd through 12th grade were allowed to provide input on the process. How does student voice also being listened to in this process? I can speak to one portion of this and then happy to turn it over to admin too. I know Marlon and a few other board members will be at Westford, where students are more than welcome to attend that, along with parents and community members. Marlon, correct? It's Sunday at 3:30.
Yeah, correct. Sunday from 3:30 to 5 o'clock. But if we need to stay longer to talk to folks, we're happy to hang out a little bit longer. Chat with folks. It's going to be over at the Brick Meeting House in Westford.
So I just want to wait. Beth or Aaron or Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the budget process, the board's done a good job at kind of explaining the budget process. You know, and we've attempted to respect the elected officials as we've gone through it. You know, that the process really, this is the time for engagement with people. Otherwise, we would have presented a proposed or recommended budget to students and community before the board saw it on the 21st of January to get the input from that. You know what I mean? You're sort of, this is the moment, this is the month or 6 weeks in which there's feedback from the community, really feedback for the board to receive. You know, we've gone through and we've stated before, we used the board survey, which had over 1,000 responses. We've worked with the union for 18 months through negotiations and heard stories and talked to them and heard their needs and expressed it. We've talked to building leaders who meet regularly, daily, if not hourly, with their staff to find out what their needs are and what their challenges are. So, I mean, the amount of input that we've received has been pretty considerable, but a specific thing like engaging students around what do you think about 6 and 8 from Westford going to EMS is really, this is the time for that feedback to happen. Otherwise, we would have been so far in front of the board. I mean, even trying to talk about the school consolidation was difficult. I mean, it came up in a board meeting, so we were able to talk about that. It was out and in play, but very difficult to try to navigate communication and information in a process that is almost written in statute and how it's supposed to proceed.
Thanks, Brian. Another question is, are the music offerings definitely going back into the budget? What will be the cut to balance this? That is going to be at our next board meeting, but the direction that the guidance that the board gave was to bring back to whole what the music programs were from FY25 this past year. Another question here, if a paraeducator and BI supports will remain stable, how is the number decreased in the FY26 budget between Hiawatha and Fleming when the student numbers have not decreased? If anything, we continue to see a larger increase in support and needs. How would this be addressed?
You want me to take that, Dylan? So there are a couple of behavior interventionists that we are able to reduce, both related to students who will need those therapeutic classrooms, as well as some actually decreases that we're seeing in the need for that service. And in addition, we, based on all of the changes that are happening, have been able to staff those classrooms with positions that are already within our budget. It is not causing us to create challenges with caseloads. We've looked at all of this, and we are able to do it within the current FTE, the full-time equivalency, the positions that we have in the system right now. So there will be a special educator who will be the primary instructor of the classroom, and then we will also have at least one behavior interventionist in the classroom as well. And we also anticipate being able to continue to staff our students with behavior intervention through the Compass program, who will continue to stay within Compass. So we have looked across our needs, and we, based on projections and our knowledge of the totality of needs in the district, we do believe that we'll be able to do that, which results in a net decrease from behavior interventionists and but maintains the number of professionals in the system. Dylan, do you want to add?
Yeah, and I'll just add, we actually we're looking to allocate staff proportional to the size of Hiawatha and Fleming. So both of those schools in this proposal would be growing, and we are looking at allocating additional special education staff at those schools to recognize that fact. So I feel like we're certainly paying attention to the changing populations of schools with this proposal to make sure we have the right amount of staff there.
Thank you both. This is a question around the district math audit that was taken. Is the district math audit being taken into consideration when budget cuts are being made for this year?
Yes, it is. I'm not sure about cuts. We're not adding to it. What we're doing next year with the math audit, and they're looking at the standards and trying to figure out, is it, excuse me, is it a program change that's needed? So that study will be done next year as we did our literacy one for this year. But we are using the audit as we move forward on best practices. So we've done an audit in literacy and mathematics, and we're using both of those audits and use those in this budget process as well to help inform us what we need. It's mainly the reason for us to move forward with the universal design, the UDL work that we're doing. They came up in both audits.
I'll take this question. When we submit questions or comments in the Google form link that's provided by the district, how are these addressed by members of the board or seen by members of the board? So all board members have access to all of the anonymous questions that are being put in. So we're able to see them. And then what administration has been doing is basically compiling them into themes to specifically address specific topics and themes of questions. I'm going to go over to Amber, and we'll have you join the chat.
Hi, thank you. I'm just pulling up my notes. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Awesome. Just in the interest of time, thank you. I'll keep that brief. But with the proposal to move, I have a Westford 2 kiddos, 1 in 3rd and 1 in kindergarten. With the proposal to move Westford 6, 7, 8 to EMS, I'm curious how the 3, 4, 5 grade levels will work at Westford. Presently, there's a shared homerooms for my daughter who's in 3rd grade with 3, 4 students. And these students get like classroom instruction with their grade level for literacy and math, and with their homeroom, which includes 4th graders and 3rd graders for STEM, all block, and specials. And then I understand that grades 5 and 6 do something similar. So having the 6th graders move, I'm just wondering what the potential, like what 3, 4, 5 will look like structurally going forward. Will kids still have opportunities for organic mentoring from the older students in their classroom? And will they also still have access to instruction from multiple teachers outside of specials? Just curious, like what that's all going to look like going forward for next year. Maybe you don't have those details worked out yet because the plan hasn't passed yet. But I just wanted to hear about what that might look like in the future. Thank you.
Amber, I do have to say that I love that the dog is actually talking and asking questions.
Is the dog talking?
It made me smile. So we have not worked out those details. You are absolutely right, because if this budget does pass, then we will start working on that. And Marcy, with the principal and the teacher leaders there, will figure all of that out. So I don't have those answers tonight. I appreciate the question, and we will keep that for sure in mind as things move forward, or we don't want to put a lot of work into it if it's not going to happen, right?
Sure.
So we've been careful about that and spending the amount of time that we need to on things, but prioritizing what those things are right now. And that definitely is work that we'll be doing. Goes through. Sorry, it's not much of a help of an answer, but
I kind of thought that might be a non-answer answer, but I just, we love our community school.
Yeah.
You've heard it from a lot of Westford families. I'm actually somewhat excited about the opportunity for our older kids to have more exposure to more things with a consolidation to Essex Elementary, or sorry, Essex Middle School. I say that with like cautious optimism. You know, I do
Yes.
love the small school setting. I think it's great that people are talking about repurposing Westford. I am scared that it is like one step towards ultimate closure. So I'm not sure if our district has like magnet schools or access to different types of things like that. But I think as a community, we should be getting together and talking about, brainstorming and thinking about how Westford could be repurposed.
Absolutely. And we've
So
talked about a magnet school. It would be a great school to be a magnet school, especially, if it was focused on sustainability or outdoor
yeah,
education or something. The land there is beautiful. Westford Community School is definitely an asset to all of us, where it's located and all of that. Amber, and I would say, you might want to reach out to Marcy to see if she has any ideas of what she's been thinking about, because I'm sure her brain's working really fast and trying to figure all this out too. So that might be a place to ask her your other questions about 3, 4, 5.
great. We'll put it on the agenda for PTO. Thank you.
There you go. You're welcome.
There's a question here. It says, our Summit Street kids love their teachers and take great value in art and music classes. Under this proposal to move Summit kids to Hiawatha, would there be capacity to have designated art and music classrooms? We're unclear on how or if these classrooms would fit.
Brian, do you want to? Yeah.
Yeah. So there is, I believe there's 14 rooms on the first floor level of Hiawatha. Some have been repurposed, but they were originally constructed as typical classrooms. And then down the stairs, there's 2 additional spaces, one for art and one for music. The design right now with the class size as we've been presenting uses all 14 spaces on the first floor. And therefore, I mentioned the other day at the board meeting when there was some discussion about trying to address class sizes, particularly at that location, we would need to look to repurpose an additional room. That was one of the elements of trying to do that. There's also some talk about what's going to happen. Where do we want to locate? I think Dylan mentioned, where's the best place to locate the therapeutic classrooms and so forth. So right now, in the current design with the class sizes the way they are, there would be a dedicated art room and there'd be a dedicated music space.
And then there was another question here, which I can take on behalf of the board of why is it that we're making cuts this year and not just increasing the budget? Why are we as a board choosing to go with a level budget? If we, and Brian, I don't have that exact number on me, but if say we did add that 6 million in, it basically would add 9%, 9% overall on top of the 9% now. So we'd see it roughly 18 to 20% tax increase in both the Essex Junction and Essex Town communities, and roughly a 10% increase in the Westford community. Is that rough numbers to say there?
Hey, Brian, you're muted.
I'm just opening up a slide deck. Yesterday we met with the entire staff, and I talked some about what a level program would mean, and I'm just calling up that, trying to. But your math makes sense to me that it would be around there.
So with that, and other board members can chime in. So the board as a whole, the guidance that we gave administration was to level budget for this purpose, because given the tax increase we saw last year, the resounding feedback that we heard was to maintain educational excellence, but also maintain affordability in this community. And you kind of start hitting that tipping point when you have double-digit tax increases year over year. While it does provide a hesitation to do as many cuts in the actual school, what it ultimately does, though, is it does hurt families that are paying those double-digit cuts year over year over year, or double-digit increases year over year over year. So that is why the board did take that path to basically decide, we want a level budget this year, so that that impact isn't felt deeper and deeper by our families.
Yeah, it did.
So I had modeled it out, or used our model, which had we gone level program, we would have been right around a 7% increase in our ed spending. And that would have translated to an average tax rate increase across all three communities. So this is an average. That would have been 14.5%. And that's after last year's average of 11.6. So a total of about 26% increase in 2 years' time. And it would have made that the average taxpayer would have had about $1,000 more a year in property taxes. And as it is, where the budget meeting board's requirements will be an average tax increase across all our communities of just around 6% as an average. Westford is less. Their common level of appraisal didn't drop as much as Essex Town and Essex Junction. So that's, somebody had asked that question in the anonymous of why isn't the tax rates identical? And it's based upon grand list, and the grand list each have a different proportion of what they represent to fair market value. So that's why tax rates change from community to community.
And the other part here, just an anonymous person, when will the budget be finalized by the board? It seems like the board has now provided new guidance, and the administration team has to start over with certain cuts. This is difficult for families, but also school staff who are waiting to find out what is going to happen, with lots of rumors and unknowns. That is something that we absolutely take into account, and we want to make sure that the information that's being communicated out is coming directly from the district. And I know that there are lots of rumors out there. I mean, last year we saw this as well on what is actually happening. I would encourage, especially for any staff and families that are on this call, is make sure that if you have questions, reach back out to us to make sure that, hey, I heard this rumor, is this true? We can absolutely address that right away. We don't want this process to cause anxiety, but we also recognize that it does, and there's no way around that because of the severity of the cuts that we do have to enact this year. But the final budget will be, so the budget will be finalized by the board end of February. And then at that point in time, it then goes to the voters on April 8th. So April 8th is when the voters would make a final decision. And then at that point, everything would be enacted. The cuts, the new plans, the new programs, and everything going from there. The other thing that I just want to mention, I'm seeing a lot in here around Summit Street. And then I know there's some expletives in here around Summit Street. I just want to say, I hear it. I absolutely hear that. And we are having more information on that on Tuesday. And I'm seeing a request in here just to talk more about class sizes. We will address that as well on Tuesday. The other piece that the board did ask more information for was around pre-K, and I'm seeing a lot of continuous questions around pre-K. Again, that is more information that the board asked for on Wednesday, and I appreciate the community's patience as we as the board ask for more information, make different decisions, and then go back and forth with administration to finalize what this budget will be. And this is the challenging part of this process, because it does take time for us to go back to administration, say, like with the music, we want to see a change in this. They then have to go back and look into the budget. It's not just a one-night decision where everything can be flipped or turned over. And because we don't want to do budgeting in that way, we want it to be done strategically and be done well. I will, with that, turn it back over to any other board members for any other closing thoughts. And then we will continue to follow up with individuals.
I just want to say thank you so much to everybody that showed up tonight. It's really wonderful to have you all join in and participate. So thank you very much. I know this is dinner time for a lot of people. So
And I'm seeing a lot of comments saying that people have asked questions and they're not getting, they haven't heard a response. And I just want the community to know, like, we're working on that. We're getting a lot of emails, and we, between, the three of us, we are trying very hard to get back to you as soon as possible. So please be as patient with us as you can.
All right, we will continue to follow up, and then I'm seeing a lot around Summit. We will have more information on that on Tuesday night, and more information around that and pre-K. And like, I just want to name, like, we hear frustrations, we get that, but I also want to say I appreciate the leaders in the community that, instead of coming out and saying expletives to the board, come out with solutions-oriented mindsets, and come out with mindsets where, we get that this is hard and we get that this is challenging. And I just want to remind you that we're all part of this district. There is no one school that is isolated in this district. We are all part of EWSD, and we recognize the challenges that are being faced, and we need to work together in this. And to be quite honest, like, we need to be in this together, because if we're divided, we are going to fall against what the state is bringing forward. And part of why, honestly, some of the emails aren't getting answered is because we are spending hours on the phone with reps and trying to deal with the state, to tell them how terrible of an idea they are bringing forward. And I'm trying to spend my time and energy doing that while having little one. We are all doing the best we can, so I appreciate your patience. But I just want to express my thanks and gratitude to those individuals who come forward humbly and are trying to bring forward solutions and understanding. And I get this is hard, but we are all trying to do this together. So I want to just give my appreciation to those individuals who have been consistent support through this, even with the hard changes, and giving us the time and capacity to actually really dig into this budget more, so that we can make changes such as music or other areas. But the reality of it is, there are going to be decisions made in this budget that aren't going to satisfy everyone, and we recognize that. But we have to continue forward as a district so that we can do the best for all of our kids, all of our taxpayers, and most of all, rail against what the state is trying to do at this time. So I appreciate you all. Thank you for being on the call this evening. And thank you to my fellow board members and admin team for being here. And we will see you on Tuesday night.